Have you ever felt like your emotions are in the driver's seat and you're just along for the ride? Well, today we're diving into a really powerful idea that just might flip that whole script. We're going to explore where our feelings really come from and how a simple shift in thinking can give you some serious control over your own emotional world.
All right, let's start with a question. Think about the last time something went wrong. Maybe you got rejected, or you failed at something that mattered to you. What did you blame for that awful feeling? The event itself, right? Most of us do. But what if that's not even the real source of the pain?
You know, we're all kind of taught to think in this straight line. An event happens, and bam, it causes a feeling. But there's a crucial, totally invisible step in that equation. A missing link between what happens to you and how you feel about it that once you see it, changes everything.
And that missing link? Well, it was actually discovered through this fascinating and really personal experiment. It was all done by a young guy who would go on to create a groundbreaking type of therapy, all because he decided to hack his own biggest fear.
See, before he was this famous psychologist, Albert Ellis was just a young man struggling with a pretty debilitating fear. He was absolutely terrified of rejection, especially from girls. And this wasn't just some minor anxiety, it was the kind of thing that completely shaped his world.
So, what does he do? He designs this totally radical experiment to face his fear head-on. He sets himself this wild goal to approach and start a conversation with 100 different women. Just think about that number. 100. That's 100 opportunities for the very thing he was most afraid of, rejection.
And get this, he didn't give himself much time. The deadline for this whole nerve-wracking mission was just 30 days. That's more than 3 conversations a day, every single day, no breaks. It was like he created his own personal boot camp for facing fear.
So what happened? Did his world just fall apart like he expected? Not even close. Even though he got rejected a lot, that horrible tragedy he had built up in his mind, that crushing humiliation he was so sure was going to happen, it never occurred. And that simple realization changed everything for him.
Because what's really interesting is that what Ellis discovered in his personal experiment, it wasn't exactly a brand new idea. It was actually a modern-day example of a powerful philosophical concept that goes back nearly 2,000 years.
The ancient Roman philosopher Epictetus wrote this: "Our distress doesn't come from events, but from our judgments about those events." And that's exactly what Ellis found out, right? It was never the rejection that was the problem. It was the story he was telling himself about the rejection that caused all the terror.
And this ancient wisdom, it's really the heart of what's called a constructivist philosophy. Ellis took this foundation and built his own revolutionary approach called Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, or REBT. And the core idea is simple, but wow, is it profound. We actively construct our own emotional reality based on the stories we tell ourselves about what happens. Okay, so to make this huge idea practical, something you can actually use, Ellis developed this simple but honestly brilliant tool. He called it the ABC model, and trust me, it's a total game changer for understanding your own reactions.
Here's how it breaks down. A is the activating event, anything that happens. C is the consequence, how you feel and act because of it. Now, most of us think A leads directly to C, but Ellis put in the most important letter of all, B, for your beliefs about the event. So here's the big revelation. A doesn't cause C. B causes C. Your belief is what creates your feeling. Period.
This chart just lays it out so perfectly. Look at A, the activating event. It's the exact same for 3 students. They all got an 85 on a test. But now look at C, the consequences. They're completely different. One student feels distraught because their belief is, I always make A's. Another one is angry, believing the test was unfair. And the third is celebrating because their belief is, wow, I've never gotten above a C. The event didn't change one bit. The story they told themselves about it, that changed everything.
So, if our beliefs are the key here, what kind of beliefs are the ones that get us into trouble? Ellis was super specific about this, and he identified a particular type of thinking that acts like a villain in our emotional lives.
And these villains, they're what REBT calls irrational beliefs. Specifically, they're the rigid, absolute demands we put on ourselves, on other people, and on the world. They're the musts, the shoulds, and the have-tos. See, these aren't just preferences. They're inflexible rules that pretty much set us up to fail.
Ellis, with his trademark blunt humor, had a very memorable term for this kind of thinking. He called it a masturbatory belief system. a system built around the tyranny of constant, non-negotiable musts.
Here's a classic example. I must be thoroughly competent. Just feel the pressure in that sentence. It's so absolute, so impossible. There's zero room for error, no room for learning, and definitely no room for just being human. Believing this is a recipe for constant anxiety.
Now here's the rational alternative. Notice it's not about lowering your standards, it's about being realistic. It swaps that rigid, tyrannical must for a flexible preference. It's a story that actually accepts reality, that we're imperfect creatures. And this simple change leads to self-acceptance instead of self-destruction.
And this right here is the most empowering part of this whole framework. Because if our beliefs cause our feelings and we're the ones in charge of our beliefs, well, you can probably see where this is going, right?
This is the big takeaway. You are the author of your beliefs. That means you are holding the pen. You can learn to spot those rigid musts and shoulds, to challenge them, and to consciously write a new, more rational story. And the second you change your B, your belief, you fundamentally change your C, your emotional reality.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What's one must or should that's been kind of running the show in your life? And what do you think might happen if, just for today, you decided to tell yourself a different story? The answer? Well, it could really change everything.